guys, Janet here with Radiant Wanderings. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and stay a while. And if you find anything in here helpful or useful, please do give a big thumbs up. And as always, if you prefer this information in written form to save for later, just check the description below. I'll have a link there to my blog post with all of these details as well. This is the training that 4 of us did to go. And then I'll also link to the vlog at the end, which is just our whole journey through. And you can definitely see the energy drain from us as we go, but that'll give you kind of an idea of how our training paid off as well. So we hiked from the North Kaibab Trail up to the Bright Angel Trail. That is just shy of 24 miles in total. It took us about 14 hours with stops, with, for us, a 60-degree swing in temperatures from start to finish. And it's an elevation gain and loss of over 10,000 feet. So this is on the strenuous hike list for sure. So quickly before we get started, I do have to give just a little disclaimer. If you go to the National Parks website, doing this hike in one day is strongly discouraged. It's not advisable. We decided to go forward and train, and we're pretty confident in our abilities to do this in one day. However, I have heard if you need to be rescued, it's a $15,000 fee. I have not verified that. I don't really know. Rumor has it if you're actually dying, they waive it, but if you pull a hammy, you're gonna be paying 15 grand if you call for help to get out. So don't do that. You definitely wanna train. It's just crazy to do it in one day because we lucked out. The temperature, the highs in the box were in the 90s when we went. We went in September. However, it can still get really hot in September. We start at 4 a.m. because to hike it all in one day is a long hike. And when we started, the temperatures were in the 30s. I've heard that it can get up to 130 degrees in the box. Thank the Lord it was not that hot for us. I don't know if we would have survived if it got to be that hot, even with our training. So definitely consider that. There's not really a lot of help. If you have medical issues, definitely don't embark on this.
The rim to rim is very doable, but you would be crazy to do it without training. So if you train, if it's something that you've always desired to do or want to do, carefully choose who is going to do it with you. One of the benefits, and probably the one thing that saved us, is you can train and still have an injury or something. Thankfully, all 4 of us in our group trained faithfully. We were in different states. Tara and I were in the same, but Janet and Teresa were in different. We trained faithfully for 2 to 3 months in advance, each of us with the elements, with the things that we had around us, and thankfully we didn't have any twisted ankles or anything else. So I trained probably from 2 months forward very religiously, doing something almost every day. And it wasn't always something big. At least once a week I'd get a big hike in, starting probably with 8 miles. My longest hike I did 16 miles twice, and I did that for the stamina, just to build up stamina. And I did wear my backpack probably the last month. Every time I took a hike, whether it was short or long, flat, on hills, up steps, whatever it was, I put my backpack on and packed it pretty full of stuff just to get the weight on there and to get comfortable. Even if I wasn't gonna drink all the water, I would put 3 liters of water in it and practice with that. A lot of my training, unfortunately, for the long hikes was flat because others weren't available, and I just had to get the miles in. So I would do we have a bike trail near my house, so I would hike that. And we had a park, just local parks near us, that had some paved, like a mile-long paved trail, and I would hike that. Tara and I went to the Cincinnati Nature Center multiple times, which had a lot of incline, decline. I would do 3 miles, 6 miles, 5 miles, 4, whatever we could fit in that given time we did. And that was really helpful with our full backpacks and our shoes that we were gonna wear. On the other nights of the week or different days of the week, I would get on my treadmill, because I have a treadmill, and I would run 2 miles, or I would, if I didn't have running in me, I would hike and I'd put it on incline 3, 4, 5. By the end, I was doing incline 5, whether it was for an hour long or however long that distance. I would do the incline, which I felt was good for the ascension practice. I have carpeted basement steps, and I just wanted to get that height. I would go 3 steps up and bring the other foot up and back down and up, up, down, down. And I would do that a lot of nights of the week too. And I would do sets of 100, but I just tried to do something every day. Just on top of being mindful of 8,000 steps, I would try to do something additional. And I think that I would do that again.
So I live in Michigan. We don't have a lot of elevation there. My main training, I was most concerned about the heat And so while I'm normally a morning or evening exerciser, I started going to the bleachers. I started about 3 months out, and so I started with 20 sets. Jogging up and down was 1 set, and I think there were 33 or 35 steps up, and then each week I increased that by 5. So I ended up the last week before we went doing 70 sets, which took about an hour and 15 minutes. In the beginning, I would jog all of them and just take short breaks as needed. And then at the end, I ended up walking 1, jogging 1. And I think it was really good heat training because the sun shines down on the bleachers and then it reflects off the bleachers. And there's just something about stairs that no matter how in shape you are, I just think they're brutal. I was doing that, and then the guy at the running store who had been helping me said to be sure that you're doing endurance as well. And so I started, I think, at 6 miles, sometimes on a trail and sometimes just around my house, and ended with 20 miles, which took about 6.5 hours. 3 weeks before we went, I got to go to Glacier, and Jana and I actually did a 12.4 mile hike with similar elevation to what the Grand Canyon is. So I felt like I had all of the pieces, just not together. A friend texted me the morning of and said, "I'm so proud of you, you've done the training, now just let your muscle memory take over." And as we neared the end and it got hard and you felt like you couldn't do another switchback, I just kept thinking, it's just one more set of bleachers. Like, you've done this, right? It's just one more mile. So I think mentally, more than anything, but physically, yeah, I guess, because my body did do what it needed to do to get me out of there.
Okay, so for training, I did running, steps, I did some cross training, even some upper body exercises. I did some back strengthening because I knew we were going to be carrying the backpacks. And then there's not a lot of elevation in Cincinnati, but we did have a decent park with some really good hills, and I would just kind of do laps at that park. And then Becky and I also did a nature center where we hiked several times together. One of my exercises or training days I would do, especially if the kids were home and I couldn't really get away for the hours it would take to train, I had a driveway workout. I had a hill right outside my driveway. I would run up the hill and then come back home and do 10 push-ups, 10 arm exercises, jumping jacks, and then I would do like steps, except it was a retaining wall, so it was taller, and I would do step-ups on that. And then you go back and you do another run up the hill, and then you come back and you do 9 of the same thing, and then you run and then you come back and do 8. So it's kind of an endurance thing. Oh, and then for just endurance, every week I would add 2 miles of either walking or hiking if I could over several weeks. So I built up from 7 miles up to 20 was the longest that I did. And I did feel like it was sufficient. I started 3 months early. I don't think you're ever necessarily ready for something you've never done before, but I did feel like it was sufficient.
Whew. All right, you guys. So for training, I live in Montana up near Glacier National Park. So while I generally throughout the year try to walk at least 3 miles a day, that's typically on a flat ground through a neighborhood. So for training, I really wanted to hit the mountains. I am surrounded by them. There's no problem. So I started out with kind of 3 mile, decent elevation, up to 6 mile, up to Teresa and I, the longest we did was a 12 miler round trip, and that had equal elevation gain and loss to what we were doing in the Grand Canyon. So I felt pretty good about that. I did notice in my training that I was having knee problems on the downhill. I was hoping that in rim to rim, if I did acquire the knee problems going down, that as I went up, they would dissipate. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and I don't really think I could have done anything or trained differently for that. I started kind of walking differently to try to relieve that knee, which then got blisters on my right foot. So at the end of the vlog, where you see me say everything hurts, it's really every step I take hurts, because on the left side it's my knee, on the right side it's the blisters on my feet. I would say for training, in addition to doing the hiking, I did run, and I am not a runner. I hate running. So when I say I ran a mile, So most of you are going to laugh at me. But for me, that is huge. I hate running the mile. I hated it in high school. And so just pushing through with that, it sounds silly, but that got me through at the end. When every step I took hurt and I didn't want to go anymore, having run the mile and wanting to quit at a half a mile and pushing through the rest of the way, that's where that came into play. So that was definitely probably one of the most helpful things for me. So for you, that might be something different. Whatever exercise it is that you hate, do it, and do it about double what you really want to do it. Or double when the pain hurts and you really want to quit. Just keep going, because that's what you're going to need at the end. And I do feel like the training was great. Again, like the other ladies, started a couple months out and just doing regular hikes around here, and then the jogs a couple times a week.
So one of the things that we discovered after the hike yesterday, we could feel it through it, but that we didn't know until afterwards in our discussions, there are two types of people. There are mountaineering people, and then there's canyoneering people. You either are strong going down with the descent, or you're strong coming up with the ascent. And we discovered afterwards, it was very apparent on the way out as we were coming up the last 6 miles or so. Janet and I both are mountaineers. We prefer to go up first and get the difficult part over, and then just sail on downhill. So in the morning, early morning, Janet and I were chatty, we were quick, we were light on our feet, and the other two were very quiet in the back, and discovering afterwards they both were very just concentrating really hard. They didn't like the downhill, and they had, didn't really like it dark. But downhill is difficult for them. They were much stronger at the end. They really liked, they enjoyed, they were happy, they were peppy, they were energetic. Really the last 5-6 miles heading out of the canyon, where Janet and I were exhausted and just tired and just really needed to be quiet at the end of the hike and concentrate. And we were opposites. So a word of caution, if whoever your group is that you're hiking with, if it's a big group, then you're gonna find people that have the same strengths and the ways that you hike with you. And if not, if it's like a spouse or just a friend, if you both are very different in your hikes, it can be probably very frustrating, because if you want to hike all the way down and that's not their thing, they need to concentrate, they need to be quiet, it's probably going to cause some frustration for both parties. On the way up, probably the last 3 miles, Janet and I both had packed some music in case we needed it, and we both put our earbuds in. We didn't want to talk, we needed to concentrate on the hike. And the music was actually something really good. The other girls didn't need it. Tara and Teresa just hiked on out all energetically. And so just be aware of who you're hiking with. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Know that if your partner or whoever you're hiking with needs to be quiet or to be still, understand that up front, and know that it's okay to say. In hindsight, I wish I would have said, don't wait for me, go on to the next checkpoint. I will meet you there. I needed to take more breaks than they did, but I didn't feel like I could take them because it made everybody else wait. And it was a little bit frustrating for a couple miles in there. But in hindsight, we learned that if we would have communicated a little bit better, or known to say, it's okay, go ahead, it's okay, I'm going to finish strong, it's just going to take me a little bit longer, that would have really helped all 4 of us.
All right, you guys, I hope that was helpful. If you have done this before and you have additional ideas, leave them in the comments below. If you have questions, leave those in the comments below. I love interacting with you guys. And be sure to hit that notification bell so you get notified when the next video drops, which will be how to pack for Rim to Rim. Both items for your backpack and then food items as well. What we packed, what we loved, what we didn't, and all that good stuff. So join us next week for that.